Time passed by slowly while you waited at the rendezvous point atop a rooftop, playing with your cards in hand. The briefing for the mission was simple, just an ordinary inspection of Endor docks. Keep a low profile and survey the area for any suspicious activity. It felt pretty mundane, especially to send out a pro hero for this kind of mission. Well, not you. You were just a sidekick. Support hero, really. But a sidekick compared to the Phantom Thief. He always made you wait. Ever since UA, he had always made you tap your shoes and fidget. But not because you were nervous. It was the anticipation. For years, ever since UA, you had persisted in following his footsteps. After all, when someone with a quirk like his was studying in the hero department, a general studies student like yourself wanted to adhere to those standards. With the final flip of your cards, you began to inspect each one. Royal cards of each suit, to be exact. Prepping for the mission helped in storing which quirks would be useful. Between the King of Hearts to the Jack of Spades, you made sure certain ones were going to be useful. And though you could catalog 16, you needed inventory. Your cards were one use only. The sound of footsteps caught your ear before you turned to find your pro-hero partner approaching from the shadows. Nato Monoma appeared into the evening light, fixing his tailored suit blazer by his shoulders while he wiped a bit of dust from them. Spending time with the man helped you learn about his mannerisms and how he operated, and you knew he always prepared himself with a tailored set of 10 quirks under his belt. Literally. You spotted all of his pocket watches ticking away, finding that one or two of them acquired new ones recently.
"What took you?"
You asked, curious about his slight tardiness.
"Must you ask that question every mission?"
He asked back, before pointing to his clocks on his belt.
"Prep time? Really?"
You questioned.
"I thought you'd be well prepared by now."
"One can't be too careful,"
he remarked.
"Besides, I'm sure you can lend me a few, right?"
You rolled your eyes with a playful smile. He was right. You had mentioned how compatible the both of you could be out on the field. Even after graduation, that was still the case, and funnily enough, Monoma eventually agreed, when he invited you to aid him in a mission of his. You chuckled inwardly, remembering one time the both of you, out of curiosity, tried to copy each other. That didn't turn out as well as the both of you hoped.
"What are you laughing at?"
asked Monoma, turning to you with a raised brow.
"Oh, nothing,"
you replied nonchalantly.
"Just a funny thought."
"Care to share?"
"Only if you tell me what you prepped. I want to make sure I'm ready for you when you need it."
Monoma was taken aback by the request, yet a smile crossed his lips, checking his clocks on his belt again. Nato Monoma was ranked in the pro hero circuit, something he had wanted to achieve since his academy years. But ever since entering the rankings, it had been nothing but messy politics. He began to learn about the Public Hero Commission's hand in everything, how they operated, how they maneuvered, and most importantly, how they perceived all heroes, sidekicks and all. It was abysmal. In fact, it was in this very same place, Endor Docks, where he was recognized as a pro hero, a young rising star who came to the aid of law enforcement during the inferno that almost swallowed the docks whole. The media did throw the event out of proportion, but that didn't stop Monoma from lapping up the attention. Still, it helped to keep his cover protected. Thanks to Midoriya, he always had a means to obtain quirks needed to sustain this pro-hero lifestyle. Of course, he claimed that for each quirk he held, he either obtained it on mission or had asked permission prior. Thankfully, his ranking, though not in the top 10, helped in keeping prying questions at bay. His professional connections with those still in the pro-hero circuit, such as Todoroki and Ida, were a great asset, especially when it came to Endor docks. This double life was a juggling act, even going so far to twist the truth with his fellow classmates of Class 1B. Many over the years had asked about his change in attitude about the heroes, and former heroes, of Class 1A, gossiping and conversing about how some had turned to villainy while others became supporters, if not sponsors, for Monoma's rising career. In truth, his choices were based on conversations with you, the general studies student that wouldn't leave him alone all those years ago. Monoma still inspected his pocket watches, eyeing the most recently wound one closest to his buckle.
I've got quirks to help with surveillance, and in case something crops up. I assume you have the same.
A quirk for each suit,
He replied.
so only 4 instances.
That should be plenty. What kinds?
Surveillance, mostly. I borrowed from a hero at Night Eye's agency months ago and kept it catalogued for this kind of mission. I'm worried about them.
Monoma did not show an ounce of emotion upon hearing your statement. However, inwardly he held his tongue. He ensured that he had the quirks he needed for this mission, and then some, having come from Midoriya's dollhouses not too long ago, thus explaining his tardiness. However, this working relationship with you had its risks, this being one of them. There was rarely a time either of you conversed about the collection of quirks to be accessible each mission. It made things messy, and for the most time, obtaining quirks was a personal venture.
What happened to your eye?
You asked, noticing a slight bruising underneath his left.
Oh, I was training yesterday.
Monoma answered, shrugging off the minor injury. For a moment you noticed his expression falter, but he smiled, almost laughing at your observation. You walked up to him with your hand outstretched, pulling out your Queen of Hearts, the card glowing until it disappeared into a trail of dimly lit smoke. With a gentle grasp of his cheek and standing on your toes, you placed a kiss underneath his eye, taking him by surprise. It wasn't long until the bruise disappeared, healed fairly quickly. You smiled up at him while he turned to you with a pout.
You visited Recovery Girl, didn't you?
He asked flatly.
Medical assistance is a must.
You replied, rubbing your finger gently where the bruise marred his face.
And I've got 3 more instances, so at least you'll know that now.
You turned towards a large expanse of Endor docks, watching the sun set over the ocean's horizon. Pulling out the ace of diamonds, the card glowed before it disappeared in your hands, your eyes now able to zoom into the distance, everything in pure clarity.
I just hope they're okay.
You spoke, catching Monoma's attention.
I heard that they never arrived to work this morning from a local hero in our agency. Someone saw them last night, on their way home, but they never showed up.
Monoma joined you by the edge of the rooftop, scanning the wide expanse of the docks himself. The sea air drifted past with a salty freshness, each breath filling his lungs and relaxing him.
There had been more kidnappings lately,
commented Monoma.
Deku must be onto them.
Shouldn't someone take over what they've been doing?
You asked, your eyes keeping a close watch on the rundown warehouse not too far away.
They were leading the investigation against Deku.
Not our choice to make. It's up to the Public Hero Commission.
Huh.
You sighed heavily at the thought. As hard as the truth felt, nothing could be done until the Public Hero Commission stepped up. The system was rocky at best, and you knew this ever since the biggest hit to everything was Endeavor's retirement. Hawks' betrayal was the salt to the wound, and the rankings became a bit of a joke. Things had turned sour. However, working with Monoma, the Phantom Thief, was a blessing in disguise. He wasn't one of the top pro heroes, but he was enough to be called on the field when needed, even if it were surveillance. He had the best work ethic, and a smoother tongue to boot, able to keep people on side. Despite his attitude back in UA, you watched him grow into the man he was today, and was thrilled when he personally asked for your assistance. You had been his sidekick ever since. Little did you know that Monoma was also using the same quirk, having obtained it from Midoriya along with some useful information from his puppet. It was a battle when he interrogated them, but he held his own cards close. Watching for every corner, Monoma anticipated someone to appear. The fact that the briefing requested for a surveillance mission at this time meant that some agencies had caught wind about a scheduled relay between Endeavor's agency and Endor Docks. This was further supported due to Midoriya's puppet, who had weak leads to go on, but had been anonymously tipped about these specific rendezvous. His eyes turned to you, still focused on the docks with your eyes intently scanning the floor. There had been times when he would suspect if you suspected him. However, Monoma felt a twinge of guilt every time he worked with you. You had been nothing but supportive of his career, actively taking measures to keep being the sidekick, the support hero that you wanted to be. Humbleness, humility, he hadn't learnt those lessons until he was incessantly annoyed by you during UA. Now you were a rock that he could lean on, someone who understood his views on his quirk. He had fallen somewhere along the way, fallen out of the hero lifestyle, but fallen into you.
Hey, there's somebody down there.
You informed, causing Monoma to whip his sights towards the derelict warehouse that stood in shambles.
They've got something in their hands.
His eyes widened slightly at the sight. It wasn't the usual messenger that arrived, but someone completely different, looking around as if they were confused or lost. Indeed, he spotted what looked like a leather sleeve in their hands, black and sealed. Monoma knew of these trips, but had no inkling of what information or items were passed along. In fact, he had interrogated Midoriya's latest resident if they had any information, but with no luck. Though Monoma acted as an informant from the pro-hero circuit in the field, he wasn't privy to all of the workings behind everybody, especially Todoroki. Not much was ever exchanged between the two until the Endor Docks fire, but even then, all of Todoroki's activities were a mystery. Monoma continued to watch the messenger stumble through the warehouse, making their way through the rubble and debris until the rooftop, or whatever was left of it, disrupted his view. To his relief, it was the same for you.
Damn it! I can't see them.
You muttered.
How far did you get?
Questioned Monoma, standing on his feet.
Just halfway through. The roof's in the way.
Adjusting your eyes, you turned to find an open hand offered in front of you, finding Monoma above. He helped you up to your feet, until his arms swung underneath you.
Whoa! What the?
Hold tight, champ.
Warned Monoma before he ran towards the edge of the rooftop. With a push of his feet, he leapt into the air, his coattails trailing behind him while he held onto you close to his chest. The descent rushed past you until you felt his skin harden and his arms clutching onto you before his legs crashed into the concrete asphalt, cracking into the stone. The intense slam into the pavement coursed through your body, but aside from this, you came out unscathed. You peered up at Monoma, finding his face half-hardened like stone, while his legs took the brunt of the fall. His outfit looked as if it was going to be torn apart. He gently dropped you to your feet while his body returned to normal, stomping his feet out from now newly created craters and dusting himself off. You stared at him incredulously, your mouth agape until his eyes met with yours.
What?
Since when was that part of your repertoire?
You asked, confused.
Story for another day.
He quipped.
Come along.
The sight of his coattails caught your eye as he ran towards the warehouse, rushing into its burnt framework. You immediately ran after, your feet scraping against the concrete pavement to reach him, only to slow your step. Spotting Monoma stopped in his tracks. There in the warehouse in front of him, large, dark, and blemished wings overshadowed a figure that walked out from the darkness. His boots crunched atop the debris, and his long feathers draped across the floor. Out in the light, you spotted a lazy smirk on his face, but not as prominent as the scar that tore through his left eye.
Didn't expect you to be here,
commented Hawks, opening his blemished wings with a pained scowl.
Step aside,
warned Monoma.
Our quarrel is not with you. Quarrel? Who uses that word?
Hawks chuckled while he pulled 2 primary feathers from his wings, hissing from the sting he felt through his back. The charred blemishes mottled his once rich red feathers, their gnarled shape disfigured in the light. Look, we just saw someone come through here. That's all we're after. You reassured while you slowly walked up to Monoma, playing with a couple of cards in hand.
Well, you're out of luck. I saw nobody,
he replied, swinging his feathered blades in motion, his large wings expanding wildly behind him, gnarled and sparse. Just the sight of it looked horrendous.
Now, leave.
Monoma stared into Hawks's eyes, glancing every now and then between him and you. Suddenly the flutter of his feathers caught both of your ears, each one flying around the expanse of the warehouse floor before they shot towards you. One of his eyes widened at the speed before you pulled one of your suits, the Jack of Spades, in a flurry of smoke. A twist of your hand brought up a golden glow, a barrier that encircled around Monoma and yourself, protecting you from the onslaught. With each attack, you cringed under the pressure, the ting of each feather reverberating through the barrier and your arms. Monoma turned to you surprised, while you held the defense.
Visited Tartarus prison recently.
You spoke through gritted teeth.
Heard a former Yakuza member had this kind of quirk, but is not compatible with mine. I can't last long.
With the barrage persisting against the barrier, you fell to your knees, feeling the effects of the quirk waning from you. Monoma turned back to Hawks, spotting his smirk appearing again on his face, before the sound of cracking caught his ear. The barrier was falling apart, marred by tiny cracks that continued to grow larger with each attack of Hawks's feathers. Your arms shook, trying to hold on until one feather slipped through, slicing your cheek. You hissed from the attack before Monomer caught a hold of the feather. His hand hardened to withstand its razor edge before he stared down at Hawks, still with that cocky smile. A frown crossed his face while he crushed the feather in his palm, its fragile state crumbling. Soon more covert feathers breached the barrier, tiny and yet able to cause more harm, especially towards you. Like paper cuts, they sliced into your skin, around your arms, your face, and your body. In a panic, Monomer hardened his body, holding you in his embrace while he took the brunt of the feathers himself, destroying each of them with his hands. He saw this coming. You couldn't keep up the defense and he couldn't move without you. You cringed from the weight and the pressure of using the quirk, but also from the injuries that marred your body. Swiftly, Monomer dug his hands into your pockets, picking out the King of Hearts and absorbing its quirk by merely touching it, leaving the card in a plume of smoke. He picked you up to your feet, your arms straining against the onslaught and feeling each stinging sensation from wounds all over your body. You felt the trickle of blood trail onto your chin and the deep cut on your cheek before Monomer, without warning, kissed you, catching you by surprise.
Wait,
You started before his lips trailed to yours, silencing you. You felt your energy begin to drain, knowing full well of Recovery Girl's side effects of her quirk. Your body began to heal, each open wound closing and stitching together as if nothing had happened at all. There was a heaviness in your shoulders and in your arms, while the barrier you've put up began to dissipate. Again, without warning, Monomer picked out all of your Spade Royal suits, absorbing its contents from his touch before they too disappeared into smoke. As he pulled away from you, your eyes dazed and your body tired, you felt his hand on your chest while a sudden heat engulfed it.
Get back up,
he ordered before he pushed you, the sudden force propelling you away from him. In what little vision you could muster, he immediately created a barrier of his own, while the feathers engulfed around it en masse. Your body crashed into the warehouse floor, skidding across it until you smashed into various objects that still stood in the abandoned building. Dazed and out of breath, you crawled along the floor, turning to find Monomer briefly through the mass of feathers that continued to chip away at the barrier he held up this time. You felt your cards in your pockets. One suit missing. He had to be stalling or keeping Hawks distracted, you thought, while you rose to your feet and rushed out of the warehouse, locating a safe place around the corner. This was too big of a threat to manage. You waited for an answer on the other line, your knees shaking to keep you upright. You had very little energy left, drained from Monomer's healing.
I've got a breach at Endor Docks.
You started.
We need backup ASAP. Hawks has been spotted. I repeat, Hawks has been...
You spotted Monomer flying in the air, crashing onto the floor outside of the warehouse while Hawks slowly walked up to him with his feather blades in hand. His boots crunched on the ground while Monomer pulled himself up, gritting his teeth.
told you to leave,
coyly spoke Hawks while he raised one of his blades above his head. Monomer watched the mottled feather gleam in the light until your heavy footfalls caught his attention. Hawks quickly swung his blades before him, stopping you in your tracks while your arm smashed into his feathers, your now metallic arms shimmering in the light. With another swing, you attacked Hawks while he blocked each of them with a parry. The sound of metal upon metal echoed around the empty warehouse, until with a strong swing, Hawks sliced at you, the force of it sending you airborne, crashing next to Monoma. You heaved heavily, your body stiff and weak. With Hawks on approach, his blades ready, Monoma quickly grabbed a hold of you, taking a deep breath before he blew heavily in front of Hawks, creating a makeshift barrier and halting Hawks' blades. Taken by surprise, Hawks watched while Monoma outstretched his arm again, another resounding boom pulsing from his palms before both his solid breath and Hawks were pushed away. Winded by the sudden, if not unconventional, inertia, Hawks' feathers returned back to him, his wings expanding and catching him mid-air. With every flap, his face contorted in pain, spotting the familiar lights of police cars and that familiar siren. Monoma stared up at him, his eyes watching his every move, before that same smirk appeared again on Hawks' lips. Monoma held on to your exhausted body, his eyes never leaving Hawks', before he watched the former pro-hero fly away. As soon as his silhouette disappeared from his view, Monoma laid his head back in relief, breathing heavily, while he held onto you against his chest. You, on the other hand, could hear his heartbeat while your heavy breaths matched with his. Despite the brief encounter, his pulse was calm. It made you question most missions with him. No matter how dangerous the work could entail, his heartbeat had always been calm. The police lights caught Monoma's eye, the red and blue cascading around the docks, and the sirens blared every so often. He just laid there, knowing this mission was too close in blowing his cover.
Next time, we need to know what we have beforehand,
you stated, breathy and exhausted. You felt his hand tap your back affirmatively, holding on to you.
Agreed,
he replied, while his eye watched police officers approach from their cars.
You need to be on time.
Don't start. We'll do better,
he concluded, his grip tightening on you.
I'll make sure of that, champ.